The Democrats are sure spending a lot of their political capital fighting for the rights of foreigners. The latest political pilgrimage was to an ICE facility in Louisiana. 5 Democratic lawmakers trying to visit the 2 graduate students who were arrested by federal immigration officials. They are facing potential removal from the United States over what officials claim is their role in instigating anti-Israel protests on campus.
This is not immigration enforcement. This is stifling dissent. This is repression. This is authoritarianism.
Mahmoud and Ramisa are political prisoners.
She was abducted, kidnapped in broad daylight. This could be you for practicing diversity, equity, and inclusion. This could be you for reading a banned book.
Now, that comes hot on the heels of the El Salvador 4 going to bat for suspected MS-13 gang member Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The National Republican Senatorial Committee is having some fun at the Democrats' expense by putting out this fake travel ad.
Welcome to El Salvador, home to breathtaking sunsets and gangbanger Kilmar Abrego Garcia. So what are you waiting for, Senate Democrats? Step into the rhythm of rescue.
All right, so that's an attempt at humor. What do you think of the claim by, like, for example, Congresswoman Presley saying, next it's you, next it's books, next it's everything, next up?
That's what they always say about everything. And yet they're the ones that are always pushing and oppressing us, wanting to experiment on kids. What's next after that? El Salvador has become the Democrats' new Epstein Island, you know? Instead of getting a massage from a sex worker, they're getting photo ops with her pimp. You know, if they keep flocking to El Salvador, they're just going to incentivize us to send more illegals there, because then it's basically a twofer. The illegals go there, and then so do the Democrats. So just keep doing it nonstop. Keep them busy. The Dems are demanding a solution to a problem that they created. They lost that privilege. And their solution is designed to be impossible. You can't vet everybody. They claim that you have to vet each deportation, something they never asked of Obama. Yet they believe that vetting those that came in is somehow inhumane. So how is vetting when somebody coming in is an injustice, and vetting when they leave is justice? When if you had vetted at the beginning, we wouldn't be having this discussion, and I would be home getting a massage from Andre, who is from Guatemala. Are there any bad guys, I wonder, Harold, that the Dems won't defend? You know, is Jeffrey Dahmer actually an environmentalist who was reducing our carbon footprint? Was Charles Manson kind of like a misunderstood defender of family values? Was bin Laden a Saudi influencer and doting grandfather? Yeah, just stay on your phone, Harold.
I'm listening to you.
Harold, I'll turn to you. Your name was invoked.
So, a couple of things here. Democrats, Republicans, Americans have every right to talk about due process. I think sentimentally, everything that President Trump is doing as it relates to trying to send people back and actually sending people back to their country of origin, if they have committed a crime, I think Mr. Holman said it best at the outset of the administration when he said, we're going to employ a worst first strategy. And I think the American people are in support of it. We often cite polls here. 3 out of 5 Americans don't believe we should be sending back migrants or immigrants who are here waiting for their status to be approved or disapproved if they haven't committed crimes and they're paying taxes. 1 box. 2, the courts are ultimately going to decide this. And interestingly, the Supreme Court has spoken most forcefully in the last few days, saying that President Trump could not invoke the act that he's used to send these people to El Salvador, to send another group of people, a group of men who are alleged to be members of this gang, without some due process. Now, the court is ultimately going to decide, the Supreme Court, what due process rights do non-citizens have, whether they are here legally waiting for their status to be either revoked or accepted, or they're here illegally without any papers saying they're allowed to be here. That, to me, is what will decide this. And President Trump, we will all have to abide by it. Now, I don't, but some people I know often cite judges and whom they've been appointed by. I would remind everyone around this table that a 7-2 decision came down from the Supreme Court, staying something the president wanted to have happen. And the majority, in fact, all of the people that President Trump appointed to the Supreme Court voted in the majority, and that's 7-2. So I'm interested in the politics around this. It's curious. I don't disagree with some of the sentiment around the table and what President Trump is trying to do. I think some are just saying do it in a way that is consistent with our laws. And ultimately, perhaps in the next 2 or 3 weeks, if not sooner, the court is going to decide, the Supreme Court, what rights do those who are illegal or who are here waiting for their status to be approved or not approved versus those of us who are American citizens. That's the key legal question. I'd be curious to hear how the judge contemplates this issue as well.
Well, Judge, the deportations are still President Trump's #1 issue that people approve of, and that hasn't shifted despite the whole Abrego Garcia case.
Well, because most of it is not real. It's like the weapon hoax. It's like the Russia collusion hoax. It's like BLM. We have to raise money so we can give it to kids in inner city when it was for a pyramid and for people to buy homes. None of this is real. Here's the bottom line. The Alien Enemies Act is still in effect. What the Supreme Court has said is that Mahmoud Khalil was, not Mahmoud, Abrego Garcia in El Salvador was found to be a proper target of deportation. The only issue was the withholding order. The withholding order, again, I will repeat myself, is only because, as a member of MS-13, he had enemies in El Salvador who want to kill him, and therefore there was a whole order to not send him there, because as a gang member, he'd be killed by the other gang members. That's the only issue with Abrego Garcia. Let's talk about people who are being swept off the street, whether it is the Mahmoud Khalil or Rameza Ozurk. These people do not have a right to be here. Okay? And if they had been honest in the first place, they would never have gotten a visa. If they said we were going to come here because we hate you, we hate the Jews, we're pro-Hamas, we're pro-foreign terrorist organizations, they would never be allowed in. Okay? So what we have right now are these people in Louisiana in a holding center, which is where they have a right to be, habeas corpus. The Democrats are going to visit them down south, going to El Salvador down south. They never went down south to make sure the border was secure. And now they want to go into the prisons to make sure that these people who don't have a right to be here get the right medication. When's the last time they were in a prison taking care of American prisoners, black prisoners, poor prisoners? I'm done with this.
Well, I'm not going, but that's not the question. What about the Supreme Court decision relating to those swept up? Those are two different cases. The court said
there are two cases. There is Abrego, El Salvador, and then there are the defendants who are swept up under the passport visa. You don't have a right in either place.
Okay, but there are three. I'm talking about a different case. The court,
which case are you talking about?
The Supreme Court, they were about to ship another group of people back to El Salvador, and the Supreme Court...
But they want to give them due process. Everybody says they're entitled to due process.
This is the Supreme Court of the United States, not me, and I've never been down to any of these prisons.
Maybe there'll be a judicial decision soon. That would be good. But also, I asked Tom Homan this morning, Jesse, about would it help if President Trump had the Congress weighing in and on this whole deportation thing about, like, do you have to have everybody go through a court thing? You know, the Congress could act here, and it might be interesting to me to put the Democrats on the defense on see if
Republicans
they'll
control the
vote
Congress,
for
so
it.
they should do it.
Well, that's what I said.
You saw Tom this morning?
Tom Homan?
That's not your masseuse, Andre. It's
Not
a
Tom Thumb.
different guy. I'm not going to rely on the Congress. If they can get it done like that, sure, but it takes them years to do anything. Both parties use fear, Dana. Trump actually points to real stuff. He's like, yeah, this jogger got raped by an illegal. This guy got killed by Chinese fentanyl. This lady got pushed into the subway. The Democrats ask you to use your imagination, and we're tired of it. We don't have to worry about, oh, in 12 years, the earth's going to warm, so we all sizzle on the sidewalk. Oh, MS-13's getting deported. I'm next. No, I'm not. No one needs to imagine anything when the real fear is right here. And if they keep propping up these people that keep getting exposed as bad hombres, what do you think this other guy in jail's like? You think he's a saint? He's obviously not. When they told me Tim Walz was masculine and that Dylan Mulvaney was a dude, everybody they put out, you can't trust. Basically, the American people are at this point now, Dana, where it's like everything the Democrats and the media say, at best is half true because they have a horrible track record. Why do they do this? Because they only have one storyline, and the storyline is anti-Trump. It's been the same storyline for the last decade. So you now have Democrats in the media like Twister, red hand on hand on yellow, left hand on green, and they're contorted into a knot. And at this point, they are about to collapse. Kaboom. Just played Twister last night.
Good for you.
Oh,
Did
wait,
you?
I mean, I don't think we need to know
Yeah.
about the.
It wasn't naked Twister, Dana.
Oh, okay. Up next, even Dwight from The Office gets why people don't trust the media.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.